Yeah, so much thingy for his.
No, what's the waste? What do you want to do with the money?
Huh? You can build a shul just for the daf Yomi, and then.
No, he also has his wife once bought.
Yeah, no, I know. Is it once a year?
Probably a bit more, once every 6 months. So.
Let's see what I'm being. Shall I look at what I'm being offered today? Oh, not bad. How's dealing with abandonment? 9 signs of unhealed trauma. Oh, David's on.
Thank you. I'll put mine away here.
Good work, David. How are you? Can you hear me?
Oh, fourth one will come in town. You'll get the same deal.
Oh, you're mute.
Sooner.
Hear me?
Oh.
Fido's on the mute.
Oh,
Fido's on mute.
Yeah, try to listen to it.
Yes, we need to put subtitles on something else.
Oh, Fido's on mute. What's saying?
Yeah, I told
It was there on YouTube, but I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. Oh, that's very disappointing.
We need to lip read.
Okay, very interesting daf today. A lot to cover. I'm running late already, as usual. It's freezing. It's very cold today. But I haven't had the windows open, hard than eating.
The answer.
What
are we getting? What's all that about?
What do you get?
Good work. I changed the setting.
And I'm to tell you, you're late.
No,
it's one thing to come in late and whispering quietly, but to come in late and start chatting as if.
Oh,
that doesn't work.
It's all year round for you.
There's the Gemish. We're up to pay Gimel on its base, almost 10 lines from the bottom. Chod design v'chulu. The Mishnah tells us that if you have left over the Korban Pesach, you have to burn it. Actually, it's interesting. We see quite a lot left over. We worked out on Friday. You're going to have leftovers every time. There's certain gittim, certain sinews have leftovers, certain bones which are going to be leftovers. So you have to burn them. So every year, the morning after Pesach, you'd have to burn millions upon millions of kilos of meat. By mistake, and anything got left over by negligence or by mistake. Now, the problem is, it's technically, so be careful with it. Also, no, keep it close, Wait a second. What are we talking about? So you have to burn huge amounts. Now, you can't burn it on the morning of Pesach. Why? Because it's Yom Tov, it's not Deicha Yom Tov. You can't burn it, and if it's first Deicha L'Moed, it's Shabbos, you can't burn it either. Somebody pointed out, I don't remember who, you could end up having piles and piles of bones of meat waiting around to be burnt. It's quite an interesting scenario. Never think about it. Like huge amounts of bones. What do butchers do with the leftover bones? Nowadays, they'll grind it into sausages. Nicer, you'd have a huge amount of leftovers. Now, the chiddush over here of our Mishnah is you don't burn the noisa on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Now, the obvious question is burning noisa is what? I mean, it's a say. Not burning is a noisa say. So why do we? Back on. I'm not sure. Am I on mute? Do any of you know if I'm on mute?
I need to. No, yeah.
It's not working, sure. Let's get more people involved.
David, I'm sorry, trouble. Can you just speak up for a second? Can you hear me? I don't know. Okay, I think you can. Okay, so right. The text says don't leave it to the morning. That which you leave over to the morning, you should burn. You don't need a second till the morning to teach you that you had an extra morning. Another morning. So it's a special pasuk to teach you till the next morning. What do we dash for Ulas Shabbos to Shabbat? The oil of Shabbos on Shabbos. We dash you don't do a weekday korban on Shabbos and Yom Tov. It says actually, if you're not allowed to bring a weekday korban on Shabbos, you're not allowed to burn the leftover of a weekday korban. And the korban Pesach is a weekday korban because when do you actually shecht and sprinkle the blood? On Erev Pesach. So the Pesach is actually a weekday korban. So if it's a weekday korban, you can't burn the leftover of it. We dash two doshes, who and the lochem. Who will machshir of it and not machshirin? What's machshirin? What's machshirin? What? Very good. Which machshirin are you not allowed to do on Shabbos? Who will machshirin? You're not allowed to do the machshirin which you could have done before. Levadoi. Rashi says, who will machshir? The last Rashi of the page. Anything you could have done before. Very briefly, we actually learned this once like this. Savas and serving the Beis Hamikdash, which one is more powerful? Savas. A Kohen's got Savas, can't serve the Beis Hamikdash. Serving the Beis Hamikdash on Shabbos, which one's more powerful? Which can knock out the other? Avodah, because you do the Avodah on Shabbos. So Savas is more important than Shabbos, because Savas, then Avodah, then Shabbos. Now, if a person's got Savas on his Eva, do we do Bris Milah? The answer is yes. So Milah is even more important than Savas. So can Milah be Deiches Shabbos? Yeah. The logical conclusion would be yes, but the halach is that Milah Shlei is not Deiches Shabbos. Why? Because the Torah says Levadoi, it alone and nothing else. So therefore, you might have thought you're allowed to Kamash or not. If Milah Shlei is not Deiches Shabbos. So who adin a korban which is Shlei Zmanim because it's not the right time. It's not chiv to do it that day. So therefore, it's not Deiches Shabbos. Ravashi Omar Shabbos and the Yom Tov Aseh. Who when I say Deiches Loisa Aseh Aseh, the mitzvah of burning Loisas and Aseh. Doing a malacha on Yom Tov is a loisa say and asay, and asay loisa say without looking sight. The Gemara has given us 4 reasons why we do not burn loisa on Yom Tov. What are the 4 reasons? Going backwards. Ravashi says it's asay and a loisa asay can be doing loisa say asay. Rava says who levado yoselochem levado tells you not bismillah shmizman kavachima. He says Ola Shabbos v'Shabbatoi. Who was one who says it? Abaya says Ola Shabbos v'Shabbatoi, and not an Ola which is not of Shabbos. And finally, the first one was Chizkiah. It says Ad Boika twice to tell you that a special drosha you wait till the next day. Okay. Says the Mishnah. A common Pesach is always an animal, a sheep or a goat, which is how old? Less than a year. The younger an animal is 8 days. 8 days. Any animal which is young, it's easy to eat different parts of the body, like sinews and things like that. As the thing gets older, it's harder and harder to eat it. So the Mishnah tells us only that which can be eaten by a fully grown ox, you have to eat by this baby lamb or baby goat. So, for example, the eyes. Can you eat the eyes of a fully grown ox? Yes. So you have to eat the eyes. Those you have to eat the eyes of the Korban Pesach. So when we have a chabur together this year, Mitzvah Shem, I'll invite you. I'll tell you to eat the eyes. I'll tell you to eat the eyes, and I'll eat the steak. Chas v'shalom. We'll all be fighting to eat every part of it. What do you mean? How does it work? Okay. And the Mishnah continues, which literally means the shoulder blades and the cartilage. It seems at the end of your ribs, there's thin cartilage, and that can be eaten, and therefore you have to eat it. Whatever you can eat, you have to eat. Now, more, let's go to more bit. Rabbi, yes, the condition. Now, we said that which can't be eaten, not. Now, the shoulder blades of an ox can't be eaten. So the Mishnah is self-contradictory. Right, it can't be eaten. So, The Mishnah is self-contradictory. It starts off by saying whatever you can eat by a big ox, you have to eat by a young goat. But a big ox, you can't eat the shoulder blades, and yet by a young goat, you do have to. So it's self-contradictory. Elo Tanoi, our Mishnah, very strangely enough, is saying two different opinions. It's a bit of like, you need to edit the Mishnah. Only that which can eat by a big ox you have to eat, and everything else not. Even the shoulder blades and the cartilage. So there's two opinions in our Mishnah. Do you realize that? Two different opinions in our Mishnah. One opinion is you don't need to eat it, and one opinion you do. Rashi explains that obviously eating a shoulder blade, as Moshe pointed out, is not the easiest thing to eat. The answer is that you cook it for a long time, and it gets soft so you can eat it. Cartilage, no, not marrow. Cartilage, why? It's soft. We just said it before that. What do they do nowadays with bones? They grind it into sausages and whatnot.
Not bones.
Salami.
You can't stop scraping out of a roasted sheep.
Why not?
Marrow, you get marrow.
So that's the machlokas. Something that can be eaten after a long cooking period.
Inside, but not actually.
Marrow, we said already on Friday, you have to eat the marrow. The marrow you have to eat.
Can
you put it in each other?
Right, I didn't say you should eat bones. I said you should eat cartilage. You have to eat it.
No, at the same time as you eat the common pesach, and you use it in other things.
What do you eat with? You can eat it with something else. No, you got to eat it together. You got to eat it Seder night. It's not two different opinions. It's one opinion. The Mishnah explains itself. If it can be eaten by cooking it, you have to eat the cartilage, you have to eat the shoulder blades, and you have to eat the gidin orakin soft veins. And you have to eat soft veins, soft sinews, I should say. Gid is a sinew. Itma, gid is just say for the hakshus. You've got a gid. I don't know the right word for gid is sinew probably. You've got a sinew which at the moment is very, very soft. But as the animal gets older, it gets harder and harder. Now it's a soft sinew. Do you have to eat it or not? That's the machlek. You have to eat it and you can share it out. Now it's edible, so you've got to eat it. We'll go after the later stage. Mishnah says anything which could be eaten by big ox. What's the Mishnah say? It says the shoulder blades and the cartilage. But the sinews not. So you see, if the Mishnah would have, if you're mechuyev to eat the sinews, why does the Mishnah not say it? The fact that the Mishnah does not say it is a proof that what? You don't need to eat it. Is a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. The Mishnah doesn't tell you all the things. The Mishnah tells you some of the things. And the Mishnah explains. And the Mishnah gives examples of things that can be eaten if they're properly cooked. And these sinews can also be eaten. Since they can be eaten, therefore you're obligated to eat it. Remember once a Talmud Chacham asked me, and again I do not have an answer. I was meramis to it before, but since everyone was getting involved, I didn't have the courage to shout it down everybody. But it's a good question, and I don't know the answer, I must admit. And if you ever do have an answer, I'm interested to hear. Is seriously speaking, we have a chabur, imagine always our chabur. We're sitting Seder night, and I'm getting nervous about some OCD. And I say to you, quick, let's eat. It's going to be chatzos any minute. You have to finish with chatzos. So you say, okay, here, you eat the eyes. I say, why? I'm not going to eat the eyes. You eat the eyes. Or for example, the sinews. You eat the sinews. Who's going to get the punishment for not? Who's going to decide? So one person once suggested to me that all you have to do is, you take all the parts that nobody likes, and let's say there's 10 of us, we divide it into 10 parts, and everybody has to take one part. How does it work? No, parts which are not edible, you don't have to eat. Right. So what happened was, I said to him, it's not edible. This Talmud Chacham said to me, he spoke to a butcher, and it's a delicacy in certain countries. Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing is, we're very spoiled nowadays. My children won't eat meat if it's got a tiny bit of fat on or something, or if it's got an onion on it. If they've got onion next to it, the cheshes for blias tam and everything else, they won't eat that either. But the truth of the matter is, if a person was starving, they would eat it all. So this is the question I'm only asking is as follows: how do we decide? Who's going to get the punishment? Who's the achrayas on? No, you can't get soup out of
The
it.
group. It's the group.
You all get it.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to get malchus.
Yeah.
Let's say I ate 90% of the unpleasant food, and none of the rest of you even ate one bit of it. I'm going to get the punishment according to some shit. Is get malchus. I'll get the
You
malchus.
have to ask about the whole bit. Any of the animal that isn't eaten in the end.
No,
Whose
because
fault is it? Whose
There's
fault is
like a
it?
flocking station, like.
no, we pass you to malchus. We pass you to malchus.
You can argue about even the meat that isn't. It is nice.
Okay,
Anything
there
that's
you
over,
could argue. Why did you eat it? You knew there was going to be.
Well, maybe it hasn't been handed out to everybody yet.
I
It's just
wasn't
left
that
over.
food.
Okay.
Maybe some parts which are not acceptable to be eaten, they're not considered.
But you see over here, we still don't like that. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. It's a hard question. It's not. I've actually looked into it.
We're meant
It's
to
not-
practice now.
No, I don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah, you can't actually. I think I know you can't actually get any of the head. For the head part.
Ah, you're
I was
right.
actually in-
You're
I was
right.
by- I
Yeah,
was by
because of
Hayden
some.
Road. I was by Hayden
No.
Road and he showed
Okay.
me one place that
Very quickly,
somehow
yes.
got hold of a head.
Ah.
And someone used it. Oh, it was Sean.
Oh,
sorry,
Sean,
Sean.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've had that.
He showed me
Yes,
had
and
a
I've
head.
been told you don't
Had
give
the
out the head.
shoes
Okay,
up,
well, let's
so
get
it's
to.
actually illegal.
Right,
You can't
okay.
actually know.
When you go for the bavo, Romile asking the following question. So Yomile asking Ovin, when you go to a bavo, ask him this question. Me on my Bichan Gideon should say for actress in the Pesach, did the Bichan say sinews are eventually going to be hard. You're mechuyev and you can share it out on Pesach. And the Asha is we go after the current state of affairs. Well, boy, a young calf, Rashi says, as long as they're still nursing from the mother, the leather skin on the top of the head of a young calf can be eaten. So the question is it gets to mas oichen? If it can be eaten, it gets to mas oichen. So he asked him, doesn't become tummy. It doesn't become tummy. That means the head of a calf, it can be eaten, later it can't. Says Rabbi Yochanan, since later it can't, so already now it's not a food. So why back up on Pesach did he say that you were chuyev to eat it and we share it out regarding a calf? He said it's not a fruit. So Bavo asked the question. He said the one who asked this contradiction, he's not thinking about the flour. Sometimes people grind wheat and they don't care about the flour. One Shlomo says that if you're renting out your grinder, you don't care what comes out. You're just getting paid for being grinding. Sometimes people ask questions and they grind out questions without thinking what the questions are about. He was very irritated with the question. What's wrong with this question? The question is like this. Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind. In this argument, in our sugya, Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind. That means, originally Rabbi Yochanan said that Gittin Shasefon LaHakshois, what's the thing? You have to eat them. And Rabbi Yochanan was chayza that you don't have to eat them. So sinews that eventually get hard, you do not need to eat. How do we know he changed his mind? Don't check me, don't irritate me. That Mishnah is a Lashon Yochid. Very, very briefly. Rabbi Yochanan and Shlokish had an argument in Chulin regarding the skin on top of a head of a calf as to whether it's got food status or leather status regarding Tumah. Rabbi Yochanan said it's got food status. Shlokish asked him from a Mishnah, and Rabbi Yochanan replied to him that the question from the Mishnah is not a good one because that Mishnah is not Rabbim, it's Yochid. Now the Gemara there says that Rabbi Yochanan himself once said it's Lashon Rabbim. That means there was a Mishnah that says the head of a calf is a skin, is a leather, not a food. Rabbi Yochanan originally held that everybody holds it. Then he changed his mind and said it's only the singular opinion, and if we don't pass like it. So we see that Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind whether the head of a cow or calf is got food status or skin status. And the Maskona he held that it is skin. So therefore, since he held it skin, therefore there's no stira. So Rabbi Yochanan over here changed his mind. So the Maisa, what do we pass now? Didn't she say for Nakshos? What? That ain't nimdin. We pass ain't nimdin. We pass like the shlokish because Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind too. Yeah. Shiur says if somebody breaks a bone, the Pesach hatoy will come Pesach, which is toy as a loika bone gets marcus 40. Why Pesach toy? If it's tummy, what happens if you break a bone? You said it right, but not like a korban. There was a korban that came from after. You couldn't eat it, so it's not. You're allowed to break the bones. If you live over betoy, Amashi said obviously kavachim betomy, but even by toy. So Says the Gemara, Bishlam and Moise leaving over the common Pesach betoy the Tanya Simonat Bekum, Simonat Bekum, Gimel Bakos within Aseh Chalusa Selimashe Noika to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says the reason you don't get markers for Noisa is why. Why do you get markers for Noisa? According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's a lav and nitta class say. A lav which is a nitta class say is a lav which the Torah tells you how to rectify it. How do you rectify the lav of Noisa? You burn it. It's like if you steal, you don't get markers. Why? Because the way you rectify it is by doing a Shavas Gzera.
You rectify by getting flat as well.
Oh,
Or was that the kapara?
no. Whoa, I think so.
No.
No, that's not. That's why Shavas Gzera is not part of it. Again, so by Noisa, the way to the Torah says, don't leave over. And if you leave over, what should you do? Burn it. So the Torah is telling you that's why you don't get markers. But that's not the reason. And we should have lav shebei ma'aser and look at it. It's a lav shebei ma'aser because the actual act of leaving over is not an act. You're not doing anything. You don't actually leave over. It's not like it's a passive. Oh, that's the word I was looking for. By the way, you should actually know a third reason why you don't get markers for noisa. The more to mention it here, the more mentions it elsewhere. No, not because. Why? Again, two reasons Lord says over here. One is because it's not a nitta class say you can fix it by burning it. Another reason is because the lav shebei ma'aser it's a passive lav. No, no, it's a sofig. How will you warn him? Let's say this is the amount of meat I've got left. You come up to me and say to me, Yehuda, if you don't eat this, you're going to get malchus. I'll say to you, I've got another half an hour till chatzos. Oh, but by a minute before it's too late. I can't eat this in a minute. So you'll say to me, measure it, work it out. Let's say it takes 3 hours. It's impossible. No, you can't, because again, you've got the same problem. You've got this chunk of meat. So there's 10 people of us. So you're going to have to calculate how long. A minute, 30 seconds before, I'll say to you, I've got another 30 seconds. By the time it is, it's too late. Okay, I thought we had it earlier. So Gemara says, how do you know, why is it that if you break a bone of a korban Pesach, which is Tomei, why don't you get marks? The word boy is spare. Boy, you're not allowed to break a bone in it, only if it's kosher, not possible. Boy in it, only if it's kosher, not if it's possible. Rabbi Yomi, the Beis eat it. That which you're allowed to eat, since the Torah puts together the juxtaposition, the fact that the Torah puts it together, the mitzvah of eating with the mitzvah of not breaking teaches you only something where there's a mitzvah to eat, you're not allowed to break. Something where there's no mitzvah to eat, you are allowed to break. Again, let's get this very clear. Tanakama says, boy, because only if it's kosher, not possible. Rabbi says, the Torah says, eat it, don't break a bone. Only something which you can eat, don't break a bone. Something that you cannot eat, you may break a bone. The very big problem is what? Which we're going to spend the rest of the day dealing with. Oh, what's an afkimida? Listen, it's the same drosha. Again, what's the drosha? Tanakama says, boy, you're allowed to break a bone in it if it's kosher, not possible. Meaning the korban which is possible, let's say it's tomei, it went outside the Beis, whatever it is, it's possible, you're allowed to break a bone. That's what Tanakama says. Came along, Rabbi says, no, that's not the right thing. The Torah says, eat it, don't break a bone. But if you can't eat it, you're allowed to break a bone. That's exactly what the Tanakama said. The Gemara is going to give 8 answers to this question. And obviously at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, we'll wake you up if you've gone to bed. Some people don't go to bed till 3 or 4. And we'll memorize all 8 answers. It means there are 8 answers to this fundamental question. If you don't have the question clear, we might as well stop. The question is a very simple one. Tanakama says, everybody agrees, so to speak, that you're not allowed to break a bone of a kosher korban Pesach. The Mishnah says, if it's tomei, you're allowed to.
How do you eat the marrow?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. That's a good question. We'll discuss it later. We actually did discuss it later on Friday. We'll discuss it more later, but it's nothing to do with here. Here, the question is a different one. The Torah says not allowed to break a bone of a kosher korban Pesach. Says Tanakama, boy, because you live apostle. Says Rabbi, eat it, don't break a bone. If you can't eat, you're allowed to break a bone. Says the Gemara, my benayu. This is the first answer. Pesach if it's tummy. And everybody in Klal Yisrael was tummy. Leman doma kosher, according to Tanakama, it's kosher, high possible. End of the day, it's possible. Why? Because too much chubit tzibur. Really, this is not a good carbon. This is not a good carbon. End of the day, it's no good. But at the end of the day, it's too much chubit tzibur, so it's called possible. So therefore, according to Tanakama, You are not allowed to. So you are allowed to break. You are allowed to break a bone. Very good. You are allowed to break a bone. But and you can't break it again. If everybody was tummy, so you bought the Pesach Bobetuma, Kuntanakama, you are allowed to break a bone because at the end of the day it's apostle carbon. According to Rabbi, you're not allowed. So you are allowed to. You're not allowed to because you can eat it. So you're not allowed because you can eat it. Rabbi Yosef Omar everybody agrees there's no problem of breaking a bone because it's stomach. The Rabbi and furthermore, Rabbi's coming to be more maker than the Kama. He holds Rabbi's coming to be more maker. But how possible? It's possible because at the end of the day it's stomach. If it was kosher after you shechted it and after you sprinkled it, and there was a time you could have eaten it, but then afterwards it then became possible. That means there was a time it was properly kosher and later became possible. The man about kosher. At the end of the day, this is a kosher korban. Later it became problematic, so therefore you're not allowed to break a bone. Now you can't eat it. So we've got two answers again. According to the camera, it depends if it's kosher or possible. According to Rabbi, it depends if you can eat it or not. First answer is if it's Pesach Tumah, it's possible you can eat it. The second answer is we're talking about something which there was a time when it was kosher, but then it became forbidden to be eaten. So then it's considered kosher, but eventually you can't eat it. Now you can't eat it. Of course, you're allowed to break a bone because at the end of the day, now you can't eat it. Now it's possible. Hello. My Tama, what's the reason? Hashemi is possible. At the moment, it's possible. And the Shiur says, are you allowed to break a bone on the common Pesach on Erev Pesach afternoon? Think about it. When are you allowed to eat the common Pesach? Only after Nacht. So can you break a bone before Nacht? According to Rabbi, you'd be allowed to. Why? He says, eat it, don't break a bone. But now I can't eat it, so I'm allowed to break the bones. According to the Tanakhama, what? So what? The Torah says, eat it, don't break a bone. But now I can't eat it, so if I can't eat it, I'm allowed to break a bone. But according to Tanakhama, it's a kosher korban. The man do kosher, so you can't break a bone. The man do achila, ashla ba'achilo. Meisvei, Rabbi, nimnen al moach sheberosh. Nimnen al moach shebekulis. Oh. Some of you discuss this marrow. We'll discuss even more later, but this more talks about it a little bit now. There's marrow in the head, there's marrow inside the thigh. Then the marrow inside the head, you can get it out. How can you get it out? You put an earbud through the nose and you scrape out the marrow from the brain and then you eat it. So you have to eat it because it's possible to eat it. Inside the thigh bone, you can't get it. Why can't you get to the marrow inside the thigh bone? Can't make a bone. So if you don't have to eat it. So you can scrape it out and eat it. I'm reading a bit fast because it's quite a long daf, but the question should be obvious. If you're allowed to break a bone on Erev Pesach afternoon, why? Because you can't eat it yet, which we said was Shidduch Rabbi. So you should also have to eat the marrow of the thigh bone. What should you do? Break it before Yom Tov and eat it.
So you should be mechayev
to eat it. Rabbi. Oh, but the question is that Rabbi himself said that you don't have to eat the marrow of the thigh. So it's the kasha. So that's the most kasha. How can you say such a thing? According to you, that you asked such a question, ask a better question. What you should take a piece of hot coals, put it on the bone. The heat will make a hole in the bone, and then it will make the marrow accessible without breaking the bone, because you're not breaking the bone, you're just burning a hole into the bone. If you burn the bones, if you cut a sinew, we're going to learn that cutting a vein is not a problem of shviras etzem. So too, burning a bone is no problem. So according to you, why don't you have to eat the marrow of the thigh? Of course you should eat it. Why? How should you eat it? Burn it through. Says the Gemara. And why don't you? Why don't you have to burn the thigh bone? What will happen is, if you do it without realizing, you may crack it. It's very hard to make a hole in the bone without cracking it. When you burn the bone, it's very hard not to burn the marrow. So what will happen is you'll be actively destroying the marrow in the process of trying to get to it, because you'll be burning through the bone to get to the marrow. And for all you know, you'll destroy the marrow. Better, don't eat the marrow and passively do an avera, so to speak, not avera, leave over the marrow, rather than actively either cracking the bone according to Abaya or actively burning the marrow according to Rav. Says Abaya, now that I've given you this logic, I can explain to you why you can't break it on Erev Pesach. Why? If we tell everybody to break it on Erev Pesach, it's very hard for people to remember, and they'll start breaking bones on Pesach itself. So therefore, better we do not. The marrow of the head, you can scrape it out on Pesach with a toothpick, etc., that you will have to. But the marrow of the bones, that we insist that you have to, we don't touch, we tell you don't touch it. So God says, from beginning of before Pesach or to Pesach. So we've got three answers so far. The three answers are a Pesach bar betumah, where it's possible you can eat it. Second answer is Pesach, which was kosher but now can't be eaten, where it was kosher, so kosher is kosher, but you can't eat it now. The third answer, which is Abaya's answer, is the Pesach on Erev Pesach, where you're not allowed to eat it, but it's kosher. You're not allowed to eat it. Why not allowed to eat it? Because it's not yet Nacht. But it's kosher. That's the machlekes. That's the nafkemina. That's the difference. It should never be on Tanakam. No, we didn't. We just no. He argued. He argued, and he said that everybody would say that that is considered possible. He said he himself argued, but the Mandama before he didn't agree. We didn't prove that to be incorrect. The Mandama that said, he said not like that. Everybody agrees breaking a bone on Erev Pesach is forbidden. My time is up to now the middle of the wide lines. That means the first of the middle size. At the end of the day, you can eat it. We're talking about if one of the Korban Pesach's limbs went half outside Yerushalayim. So half the bone is outside Yerushalayim, half the bone is inside Yerushalayim. At the end of the day, it's kosher because the part which is inside, you can't break the bone. That means, let's say this is the bone. Right? This is the bone. Right? So we're partly out of Yerushalayim. This is the line. Oh, there's Yerushalayim. So you're going to break it. You're breaking it. So at the end of the day, it's voyulachila. But so at the end of the day, it is a kosher. It's part of its kosher. But to say it's edible, it's not edible. Tesa says it's interesting. Tesa, I don't understand this answer. Tesa, I don't understand the answer. If you call it edible, then it's all the parts edible, parts not edible, parts kosher, parts not kosher. How can you differentiate between the two? And Tesa leaves it shver. One is the tema. Tesa is the second Tesa. Okay, so he says like this. Good time. There's no problem of breaking the bone. Right. Now, here Rashi says in Arichus, and I'll say to you briefly, the Gemara does discuss it again if you want to get an interesting thing. It took me time to work it. So if you have it down, it's about to go. Let's imagine this is the hand of the sheep, right? The hand goes outside Yerushalayim, right? This part posel, this part kosher. So now, what could you do? Now, the problem is that this part is kosher. You're not going to break the bone. What we do is we peel the skin all the way back, and then we chop it over here. The reason is that way you do not have a broken bone. And this skin is kosher to be eaten. So the meat over here will be kosher to be eaten. This meat will have to be burned, and the rest of the bone will be fine. That's how we do it. So if you've got a bone, a hand goes out of your Yerushalayim half, so then what happens is we peel the meat to be able to eat it, and then we chop the bone here. That way, that way, because you're allowed to break bones. You chop at the joint. Because if you chop at the joint, you'll be safe. The Gemara discusses it at great length exactly how we do this. This is the way to do it. Okay, says the Gemara. So we're up to the fourth answer. What was the fourth answer? The fourth answer is if the bone, the korban went partly outside Yerushalayim. Rav Sheshes B'David Davidi Omar Kol K'Hagam L'Duklama Imush L'Shuras Etzem. Da'eva Apostolu. At the end of the day, it's broken. And Shviras Etzem B'No Ikebenayu. We're talking about a korban Pesach which was only half roasted. Are you allowed to eat korban Pesach half roasted? No. Mandava kosher. Why is it considered kosher? Because you can still roast it further and make it kosher. So if you got a korban Pesach half roasted and you break it, according to Rabbi, will you get malchus? No, because you can't eat it. According to the Chachamim, you will get malchus. Why will you get malchus? Because it's kosher. That's the fifth answer, is if it's half roasted. Everything agrees against malchus. You can actually eat it. Oh, you can't. Just roast it a bit more and eat it. So therefore, that's also considered royal achila. Says the Gemara, breaking the bone of the tail. The tail of a sheep goes in the mizbeach. The man about kosher is possible for kosher. He could have said anything which goes on the mizbeach. We use the tail because the tail is unique for the sheep goes on the mizbeach. So again, if you break a bone of the sheep, I didn't know that the tail of a sheep has bones, but it seems it does. You break the bones of the tail of a sheep, then is it royal achila? No, because it goes on the mizbeach. Is it kosher? Yes. So that is the nafkemina which in Rebbe Nachum, that's the sixth answer. And that's, of course, there's no problem. So you can't eat it because it's mizbeach. If there's no kazayis meat on it. The man about kosher, at the end of the day it's kosher. Just if you've got a bone which doesn't have much meat on it, then you're allowed to break the bone. You need to have some meat on it. If it's got meat elsewhere. It needs to have food on the part that you're breaking. So if you've got a bone with hardly any meat on it at all, you're allowed to break the bone because it's not got kazayis. That's the 8 answers. By the way, I wanted to mention, the chinuch says, why do we break the bones? Anybody remember mentioning once before? It comes out later as well. Why do we break the bones? Yes, but what's that? Why did the Torah teach it to us? Mitzvah says the chinuch, because the poor man breaks the bones to get every last bit. But a rich man doesn't bother. And then coming to the time, more wealthy. So this is the guess what bed. Why?
Eating even eyeballs, all these little pieces and everything. You're eating every little that is.
I mean, why eating it? I don't know about that. Let's say eyeballs, they're delicacy.
Whatever,
Why the Torah says, I would ask if the Torah says don't leave over, wealthy people don't care about. No, that's the same reason he says. He said the same thing. Poor people leave meat for the next day. Why? They're scared they won't have a meal next day. Rich people, you serve them a meal, they don't care about leaving over. No, but rich people, they don't leave over because they're enjoying themselves. Nothing to leave over for the next day. They don't care about leaving over for the next day. Full man.
Yeah, but we use a rich person eating.
No, the point is like this. At the end of the day, when we're going shlosh bits, like Suri said, the Torah says, but what's the Torah trying to teach us? A poor man is always worried about the future. See, that's why we break the yachats. A rich man, he doesn't think about the future. He's got a meal, eats everything. You're right. In the Diktuk Mitzvah, you're going to say that a rich man is not going to scrape. They don't scrape like bochim. They don't finish every bit of chicken. It gets very irritating. They're going to take a quarter, and what happens is they eat a little bit, and then they shiva. If they don't, they start another piece. If they don't like the when you get to become you start paying for your own meals, then what happens is you eat every bit on the plate. Because anyway, let me so getting off the point. What are the 8 answers? No? Okay. It has. Oh, that's very good. The 8 answers are like this. Pesach haba b'tumah. It is possible, but it's royal achila. The second answer is where it was kosher and then it became possible. The third answer was where you broke it on Erev Pesach afternoon. Fourth answer where a part went out. Very good. Fifth answer. Partly roasted. Very good. Sixth answer. Tail, which goes on the mizbeach. Seventh answer, where it's got not a lot of meat on, less than kazayis. 8th answer is very, very similar, where it's got some here, some there. Says the Gemara. Tanya Kavaminai. We have a Beis that says like 4 of these answers. Tanya Beis Echad Yochel Betzim Esishmu Boy. Torah says eat, do break a bone, and Akoshu Chav Nechav Apostle. And the Rabbi explains examples of this. If it was kosher before, but now you can't eat it, that means it was kosher, everything was wonderful. Just as about to eat it, then it became taboo. So there's no problem, you're allowed to break a bone. That was the same answer. That was which answer? That was the second answer. Where it was kosher now, I think that was the second answer. That was the answer of Rabbi Yosef. Yesh b'shah achila, if it's got about to eat, yesh b'shah etzem, ein b'shah achila, ein b'shah etzem. If it's not enough to eat, there's no shvias etzem, which could be either a Rashi or a Binah, that if there's no kasayis, there's no problem. Etzem b'olam mizbeach, ein b'shvias etzem. There's no problem. Why? Because it goes on the mizbeach. That was the answer of Alia, which was who? Nachher by Yitzchak. The Shach Sachile is B'Shuas Etzem, B'Shuas Achile, B'Shuas Etzem, which is the answer of Abaya, that you're allowed to break a bone on Erev Pesach afternoon. Itla. Even if you don't know K'zayis Bosam, Mokazeh, Yesh K'zayis Mokim Macha. Rabbi Yehuda Yesh B'Shuas Etzem, B'Shuas Etzem, Im B'Shuas Etzem. Go Machlikas, if you've got this answer, which is said according to Rabbi, is Machlikas Amoyvoim, where if you got a bone, where next to the actual meat there's no K'zayis Bosam, but elsewhere there is. Says the Beis, the Beis says when it's got kazayis meat, when it's got no kazayis meat, you're not allowed to break the bone. My inalo kazayis bosa. What does it mean it's got no kazayis bosa? Even with inalo kazayis bosa cloud, that's literally got no kazayis bosa. And my yesh. Why is there a problem breaking a bone? If there's no kazayis meat anywhere, everybody agrees that you're allowed to break the bone. The Beis says when it's got kazayis bosa, when it's not got kazayis bosa, then you're not allowed to break a bone. Now I can't mean literally got no kazayis bosa, because it's got literally no kazayis bosa. It's not an edible bone. Not an edible bone. You're allowed to break a bone. You're allowed to break a bone which is not for eating. So therefore, must be talking about? It's got non-ear, but it's got elsewhere. So it comes out that Shimon ben Lakish is halachas before the Beis kedeketoi. Or Malois, he said to him, top of a with Aleph Lav. No. Hochi ke'oma. Echad etzem sheshlo gzayis bosim b'achutz. Ve'echad etzem sheshlo gzayis bosim b'achutz. Sheshlo gzayis bosim b'fnim b'mokim shvira. The chiddush of this price is whether it's got meat on the inside or whether it's got meat on the outside. Now, what's the chiddush? If it's got meat on the inside or the outside, l'chayva, you're not allowed to break a bone. What's the chiddush?
You don't know. Even when it's inside, you can't break it.
Oh, that's the chiddush. What's the chiddush? To say it again, that you might have thought that if it's got meat on the inside, you're allowed to break a bone because it's the only way to get the marrow out. Kumash malon, not. The other Rishonim say slightly different chiddush. It's a bit frustrating because the Gemara says, like you, if you look at Rashi though, that you might have thought marrow is not real food. So if it comes to tell you that marrow is food, so either way, the chiddush is like this: when the Beis says whether it's got kazayis bosa, whether it's not got kazayis bosa, there's a law of breaking. There's a law of breaking the bone. According to Rabbi Yochanan, what's pshat in the Beis is whether it's got kazayis here, whether it's got kazayis elsewhere. You're not allowed to break a bone. According to the Shlokish, the chiddush is whether the kazayis is on the inside, which is marrow, or the outside. You're not allowed to break a bone. But Tanya and we have a Beis. The etzem the sishbu boy, not allowed to break a bone in it. And the Beis says echad etzem sheshbu moyach, echad etzem sheshbu moyach, whether it's got marrow or not. Oh, mani mekayim v'ochlis abosa b'laylo hazeh b'bosa shal gabe etzem. The Beis over here asks a question. The Torah says eat all the meat, and then the Torah says don't break a bone. You can't keep both. Why can't you keep both? Because eating all the meat requires you to eat the marrow, and the only way to get to the marrow is breaking the bone. So asks the Beis, how in the world are you going to do both? Says the Beis, maybe when the Torah says don't break a bone, it means normal bones, but bones that have marrow, you should be allowed to break them in order to get the meat. Says the Beis. So maybe say, you should break it. Don't be surprised. The mitzvah say of breaking the bone should push away the loisa say of what? Sorry, the mitzvah say of getting to eat the meat should push away the loisa say of breaking the bone. The Torah says don't break a bone on Pesach Sheni, which is spare. Why? Why is it spare? There are two psukim to tell you you're not allowed to break a bone. One by Pesach Rishon, one by Pesach Sheni. But Pesach Sheni we don't need a pasuk because the Torah said by Pesach Sheni you should keep all the halachas Pesach Rishon. So the extra pasuk teaches you you're never allowed to break a bone, whether it's got marrow, whether it's got no marrow, which means like this. When the Torah says eat all the meat, it doesn't mean literally all the meat, because you can't eat all the meat. Why not? Because there are certain bones that you can't break. It means all the meat which is on the outside, but the bones which is on the inside. Torah asks over here a very interesting question. Now, Torah asks the question that even if you would say, I say derech eloisa, I say we have a special rule, I say derech eloisa, I say what's the rule? Be'idnei. You can't be over naseh and do the loisa say later. Says Tesis, it's practically impossible to break the bone and eat the meat at the same time. So anyway, you won't say derech eloisa say. So Tesis says from here we see an interesting thing that when it's impossible to do be'idnei, then perhaps you don't need be'idnei. It's a big chiddush of Tesis. That when it's impossible to do What?
Would your argument not be what's more important? How you define is breaking the bone the lav in?
Oh, but the Gemara says that, but then the Gemara adds the words aseh dechelusa. So you're right. Because of that, that's the kasha. But from the actual drasha, it's a very important point. From the actual drashas, the Gemara is just clarifying what does the term mean. Does the term mean you're not allowed to make any bone or just bone zamar? But from the fact that the term Gemara also uses the svar of aseh dechelusa, say that is ask the question, and then it says of course. So we're up to the word meisvei. Wow, Pehim Dalef 59. Whatever happens when I get to a long daf, I go faster, and then the end up. The nice is interesting answers. But we pass like this. What? Mazel Tov, you're the thing. Mazel Tov, Yehuda, he's not on. But Mazel Tov, Bas Mitzvah.